got them song, listen.
We are delighted to have you in our presence this glorious day.
Glad to have you.
You are welcome in this house, and we hope and pray that you will enjoy your stay.
You're free to worship.
You're free to worship.
You're free to praise.
You're free to praise. For this is the day the Lord has made.
So let us rejoice and be glad in it.
We want to serve
want to first thank Bishop Mack for arranging this opportunity for me to be here and to share with you this morning. I want to ask also that we continue to remember Bishop Mack and Mrs. Mack, our First Lady, and his mother and the entire family during this period, because we have seen God answer prayer over these last months and years. And we often say within the church that God is a healer, and we have seen him heal in a mighty way. So I want to share that with you. I keep the family in prayer. I keep Bishop in prayer. He has been doing some amazing preaching and providing first-class leadership. I listen to his vision, and it continues to broaden as he touches on the vital issues and needs of our time. And I thank God for him and for you. And hopefully and prayerfully we will return to normal. It won't be the same normal, but hopefully we'll return to normal. So I'm glad to be here and to share with you. Bishop wanted me to say a word during this time about Black History Month, and I want to do just that. I want to call your attention to the book of Genesis, chapter 2, verse 13. And it reads as follows: "The name of the second river is Jahan. It is the one that flows around the whole land of Cush," which means Ethiopia. The African-American poet Langston Hughes, a product of the Harlem Renaissance, was only 17 years old when he penned these amazing words or lyrics to the poem "The Negro Speaks of Rivers," while crossing over the Mississippi River by train. The line that inspired this sermon was, "I looked upon the Nile River and raised the pyramids above it." I looked upon the Nile River and raised the pyramids above it. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus, who wrote during his travels in Egypt 2,000 years ago, referred to Egypt as the gift of the Nile. And that's what I want to talk about for a few minutes this morning: the gifts of the Nile. Now, in the book of Genesis, or the book of the beginnings, the writer focused on 4 rivers: the Euphrates, the Tigris, the Pishon, and the Gihon, rivers that flow around Ethiopia and northeast Africa. The author locates the Garden of Eden in Ethiopia. The historian Josephus identified the Jahan River as the Nile River. The Nile River, as you know, is the longest river in the world. It is the only river that flows from south to north for 4,150 miles through the northeast territories of Ethiopia and Egypt. I once sat on the banks of the Nile in Uganda, where it begins. In ancient Egypt, The Nile River annually overran its banks and flooded the Nile Valley. Wherever the flood waters settled, it fertilized and replenished the soil, leaving rich deposits of silt that made crops ready and plentiful for harvesting in the spring. The Nile River supplied the Nile Valley with gifts of water, trade, travel, papyrus for writing, reeds and grass for making baskets and matting, mud for pottery and bricks, and fish for food. The Egyptians took the gifts of the Nile and created writing, mathematics, medicine, universities, iron, tools, agriculture, architecture, pharaohs, and religion. The late black historian John Henry Clark described the Nile as a cultural highway where elements of civilization came out of Africa. And just as the Nile River fertilized the Nile Valley with precious nutrients, the Egyptians and Ethiopians took their creative minds and had an intercourse with the Nile Valley and birthed human civilization. The historical and archaeological research of Sheikh Anta Diop shocked European and Euro-American scholars when he documented that the people of ancient Egypt were a dark-skinned people. Gaston Maspero added that the unanimous testimony of ancient historians was that the Egyptians belonged to an African race that first settled in Ethiopia and in the Middle Nile. Now, to recognize the Egyptians as an African people was necessary and important because Western historians tried to take Egypt out of Africa and make it European. Now, along with the rise of Egypt, Ethiopia or Kush emerged as a major African civilization. The Ethiopians took iron work to a higher level of art. Furthermore, no other nation appears in the Bible more than Ethiopia. Rome is mentioned 20 times. Greece is referred to 26 times, but Ethiopia appears more than 40 times. You can't tell the biblical story without Africa, as my late friend, the New Testament scholar, Kane Hope Felder, testifies. Let me make it live. Abraham, the father of faith, had a child out of wedlock after he raped his young Egyptian slave Hagar. Joseph married an Egyptian woman of royalty while Moses was given his Ethiopian wife by Jethro. The Ethiopian queen of Sheba visits Solomon, and according to the historian J.A. Rogers, she returned to Ethiopia with a son fathered by Solomon, along with the Ark of the Covenant. The Song of Solomon paid her a great tribute. She was black and beautiful. Tahaka, king of Ethiopia, defended Judah against the powerful armies of Assyria, and they won. The prophet Jeremiah was rescued from a pit by Ebed-Melech, an Ethiopian servant. The psalmist prophesied, princes will come out of Egypt, Ethiopia will soon stretch forth her hands unto God. Well, then I turn to the New Testament. When Herod threatened the life of the baby Jesus, Mary and Joseph took the child to Africa's Egypt for refuge. When Jesus could no longer carry his cross, Simon of Cyrene, which is Libya today in North Africa, carried Jesus' cross to Calvary. On the day of Pentecost, when the church was born, Egypt, Cyrene, and Libya were present. The first Gentile to convert to the Christian faith and be baptized was an Ethiopian eunuch. In Acts 21:37, underscore that text. Acts 21:37, the Apostle Paul was mistaken for a dark-skinned Egyptian by an Italian Roman soldier. Now, church history is also a collaborative witness to the African presence in the early church. The late professor of the sociology of religion at Duke Divinity School, Dr. C. Eric Lincoln, who was a mentor to Bishop Mack, identified more than 15 African church fathers from the 2nd to the 3rd centuries, which included Tertullian, Saint Cyprian, Origen, and Saint Augustine, who, by the way, defended and saved the Christian faith against the threat of Gnosticism. Saint Athanasius, an African bishop, closed the New Testament canon on 27 books. Perpetua, an African Christian woman, was the first Christian martyr to die for the faith. Now, so much for Christianity being a white man's religion. Now, let me forward a few centuries to West Africa, where most black folk in the diaspora came from. Black people did not come from anybody's jungle. Let me say that again. Black folk did not come from anybody's jungle. Black people were never uncivilized, uneducated, without skills, and without religion, and without culture as imaged in Tarzan movies. Black people were snatched, stolen, and enslaved from great empires in West Africa. Our DNA identifies each of us with one of the great empires of West Africa before it was divided by Europeans into different countries. Let me make it live. My DNA connects me to Ghana with Ashanti blood running in my veins. The Ashanti are a proud people, and Ghana emerged as a world civilization in AD 300. It was known as the Gold Coast. Ghana was occupied by ambitious black people who governed large territories from Niger westward to the Atlantic seaboard to north of the Sahara. Ghana was a prosperous empire with worldwide commercial trade relations. After 700 years, Ghana declined in AD 1075, giving rise to the Empire of Mali. Mansa Musa put Mali on the map when he took a caravan of 60,000 men and servants across the African desert to worship in Mecca. Also, Mansa Musa developed the University of Timbuktu, which was known throughout the world. After the decline of Mali, the great empire of Sangay emerged. Sangay was led by one of Africa's greatest leaders and rulers, Askia the Great, who surrounded himself with brilliant scholars. He turned the distant cities of Sangay into university cities which were great centers of learning, opening its doors to scholars and students from all over the world, including Europe, that was still in the Dark Ages. Without Europe being exposed to African civilizations and empires on the West Coast, there never would have been a European Renaissance. The Moors of North Africa educated Southern Europe out of the Dark Ages. Now, I share this brief survey of the great West African empires because this was the homeland of black folk in the U.S. before slavery. I wish somebody say amen. Africans in America had a prosperous cultural history in the life of West Africa before they were captured and enslaved in the so-called New World. We have nothing to be ashamed of by claiming our African history, African heritage, African roots, African culture, and African identity. And I think Marcus Garvey put it in perspective when he said, a people without knowledge of their past is like a tree without roots. Nothing exposes the ignorance and backwardness of Euro-Americans than when a former, twice impeached, defeated president referred to Africa as a S-hole. Y'all remember that. That's why there is such a resistance to critical race theory. They are afraid of the truth. Well, just as the Nile River was a gift to world civilization, I contend that despite slavery, lynching, segregation, and oppression, by some amazing grace, black people in the U.S. created a culture and faith of resistance and resilience that was and still is a gift to America and the West. Let me make it live. In spite of racial oppression, John Glenn never would have circled the Earth in space had it not been for NASA's black womanist dream team of Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Johnson, and Mary Jackson. America may not have won World War II without the magnificent performance of the Tuskegee Airmen. We have blood banks dispersed all over the world, saving lives thanks to Dr. Charles Drew. Heart transplants are possible because Dr. Daniel H. Williams performed the first open heart surgery. Marie Brown gave us the closed-circuit TV. Light bulbs shine bright because of Louis Latimer. Otis Borkin extended the longevity of many lives after he gave the world the pacemaker. Garrett Morgan gave us gas masks and traffic lights. Shelley Jackson, a theoretical physicist, gave us the touch-tone phones, caller ID, and fiber optic cable. Jesse Wilkins created a mathematical model to explain gamma radiation. Hussein Barack Obama was not the richest president, but he was the brightest and the cleanest president yet. Black folk do not only excel in sports, we excelled in mathematics, science, art, law, literature, business, education, medicine, military, and in the pulpit. The black church was the spiritual incubator that nurtured, affirmed, and challenged us to trust God to bring the best in us out of us. Oh, I think I said something that time. I think I want to say it one more time. The black church was the spiritual incubator that nurtured, affirmed, and challenged us to trust God to bring the best in us out of us. And I submit that knowledge of African and African American history combined with the awareness of the African presence in the Bible and in Christian history will affirm our African Christian heritage, identity, and roots. The greatest form of oppression is not without, but within. The worst thing that slavery and apartheid did to people of color was not the chains it put on our hands and feet, but the chains it put on our minds. Help me, Holy Ghost. Psychological slavery taught us to hate and oppress ourselves. It instilled feelings of inferiority and low self-esteem in our mental skies. But I'm so glad when you know your history, your culture, and your religion, you know your place of origin did not begin in slavery. Prior to landing on these mundane shores of misery and suffering, for instance, in Jamestown in 1619, you had already built great civilizations and empires centuries ago in Egypt, Ethiopia, Ghana, Mali, Songhai, and Zimbabwe, just to name a few. when you know who you are and whose you are, you have a new sense of pride and dignity. Moreover, I am convinced that when you combine knowledge of our history with knowledge of the scriptures that affirm our blackness, our young people's tests and reading scores will go up. Drug and alcohol addictions will diminish. Self-destructive behavior will cease. Our elders and ancestors will be respected. Violence and abuse will abate. And black-on crime will disappear. We will unite. We will come together. If we were scientists, engineers, creators of business, kings, prophets, and scholars way back then, we can be computer wizards, engineers, nuclear scientists, AIDS and cancer researchers, politicians and presidents with integrity, and powerful prophetic preachers now. Yes, Ethiopia will, in fact, let me put it this way, Ethiopia is stretching forth her hands unto God. Well, as I close, let me return to Langston Hughes' famous poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers. I visited the great rivers of ancient civilization, the Euphrates, the Congo, and the Nile rivers, which he mentions in this poem. In the poem, Hughes contrasted the great rivers of civilization to the Mississippi River, located in a slave state. I asked myself, why would Hughes list the Mississippi River next to the great rivers of freedom and civilization? It bothered me for a long time. Then one day it hit me. The Mississippi River was in a slave state, but it was also a symbol of freedom. Help me, Holy Ghost. Slaves crossed the Mississippi to enjoy the freedom their ancestors knew on the banks of the Euphrates, the Congo, and the Nile rivers. I realized Hughes was not contrasting the rivers, he was comparing the rivers to illustrate the continuity of black genius and progress from earlier civilization to the present. As my sanctified imagination works with me, when our ancestors stepped into the river, the writer wrote what a songwriter would sing. The water was chilly and cold. It chilled my body, but not my soul. The waters were muddy and slippery. Rushing waters made it almost impossible to cross. They risked being bitten by snakes on the riverbanks, yet they remained resilient. They crossed the river anyhow. As they crossed the river, they began to sing a new song, Wade in the Water. They waded in the water until they reached the other side of freedom. I come by this morning to tell you that's my message. Wade in the water. When you get discouraged, wade in the water. When you feel broken and coming apart, wade in the water. When you feel despair, wade in the water. When friends forsake you, wade in the water. When tragedy, trauma, and trouble strikes your life, just wade in the water. When disappointment and failure leaves you crippled, I tell you, wade in the water. Well, preacher, why wade in the water? The other part of the song says, God's gonna trouble the water. God will trouble the water until justice runs down as waters and righteousness as a mighty stream. God will trouble the waters until every valley is exalted, every mountain and hill is made low, crooked places are made straight, and the rough places are made smooth. God will trouble the water. Yes, he will, until all flesh will see his glory together. Wade in the water. The gifts of the Nile is in the water. May God bless you and heaven smile upon you.
We'll make a way. Thank you so much for your generous support so that we can continue to operate in excellence. The following are ways to give tithes and offerings using technology. Use the PushPay app or go to Giving page on the Union Baptist website. Use the Cash App, $UBC 1200 Trade. Use the Givelify app, Union Baptist Church, Winston-Salem. For Rise Up Giving, please use the designated Cash App, $Union Baptist Rise Up. If you don't use technology for giving, you may bring your tithes, offerings, and Rise Up campaign payments on Sundays from 10 a.m. till noon. Envelopes will be available. Mail checks only. No cash, just checks to 1200 North Trade Street, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 27101. All of the sermons and Bible studies are available on demand on our website, unionbaptistwsnc.org. StarMed provides COVID vaccinations and testing at our church, Union Baptist, Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. till 5 p.m.